I think we need to talk about getting an abortion. Because the debate on abortion appears to be stuck over the question of when does life begin? Does it begin at birth or does it begin at conception? Those are our choices. Now, I'm pro-choice, but that doesn't mean I need to jump on the bandwagon of life begins at birth. This is a concept born more out of political necessity than common sense. If you say that it begins at birth, then you neutralize the entire question of killing, so you may as well just say that it begins at birth. But if we do that, we do it at the expense of our intellectual honesty. Because what rationale will regard a fully developed fetus on the day before birth, one that is able to breathe and move and cry and live, if only the body around it would give way and let it do so? I'm sorry, but life begins before birth, and to pretend otherwise is intellectually dishonest, with an ulterior motive. However, having excoriated my own side, I must add that if you claim life begins at conception, you are being just as intellectually dishonest. My friends, life begins before conception. I'm sure you've seen video of sperm. Are they dead? And an egg, is that a dead thing? I'm a big fan of science, but I'm not referring right now to the narrower definition of biological life. I'm calling your attention to beings that move and act and contain genetic information. A form of life is carried within the gametes. Now, it is a primitive, incomplete form of life. It can't live on its own. It can't think. It simply has the potential, through many stages of transformation, of becoming a self-sustaining individual life. Those are the properties of the gametes. But they are also the properties of a fertilized egg. It can't live on its own or think. It can't move. It can only travel on a long path of many transformations until this becomes at all possible. Birth and conception are both false thresholds to define the creation of life. Where does life begin? In my nads. And your nads. And girls have nads too, and they're full of life. So when we're asking that question about abortion, when does life begin? We're asking the wrong question. The right question to ask is, at what point has that already living thing reached a stage when we should consider it a person? And with that very legal word, person, comes a batch of individual rights, including the right to keep one's life. That's the frame for this conversation. Now, I would argue that gametes, sperm and eggs, have not reached that point yet. Otherwise, every time you ejaculate, you become the greatest mass murderer in history. But for the same reason that a zygote has so much in common with the gametes who created it, that life is also not yet a legal person. And likewise, on the other end, for the reason that a fetus on the day before birth has so much in common with a born baby, that fetus is a person. Somewhere in between there is a threshold of personhood, and determining where that is an uncomfortable, unsatisfying, and completely necessary task. And it's a task I think we're ready for, at least in the US. If you look at the enormous amount of research on what Americans think about abortion, you will find we are not as polarized as it seems. Most of us are pro-choice, and most of us think it's wrong. We think abortion should be allowed, but we think it should not be encouraged. We like giving women and their doctors the power to decide, and at the same time, we are strongly opposed to allowing abortions in the final weeks of pregnancy. We intuitively feel that there is some point in there that it should go from unfortunate to unlawful. Well, the good news is that pregnant women also intuit this threshold just like the rest of us. Pregnancy lasts 38 weeks, but only about 1% of abortions occur after week 20. So, in spite of all this polarizing debate, there is actually a de facto moral consensus in place to get it done early, before the fetus develops. I've done some reading, and it appears that the fetus is able to feel, to perceive, and to begin to think at about 26 weeks. That's much later than 99% of abortions. Do we even need a law against late-term procedures? I'm not sure we do. But let's say that we do want to go after that 1% and make it even more rare. And from how they respond to questionnaires, that would be important to Americans. So, imagine a compromise where after, say, 23 weeks, just to be safe, that 1% of abortions needed some sort of reason, like the mother's health, or if the doctor was medically certain that the brain was not yet active and there was no person. then those few abortions that we really have a problem with would be addressed without interfering with what most pregnant women and the rest of us consider acceptable. However, for this to be fair, abortions must be available. According to a survey, half of the women getting an abortion after 16 weeks waited so long because it was so hard to get one. Don't believe it? The entire state of South Dakota has one abortion clinic, and it's open 1 day a week. That's what happens when you let the people on the fringes take over. These operations must be available to poor women and women under 18. If you're a parent, I'm sorry, and it's very sad, but your daughter's body is not yours. So the best way to prevent the terminations of thinking fetuses is we have to truly allow early abortions to occur. We have to set that threshold and really be okay with what happens before it. Now, I want to take one final minute to call out the Republican presidential candidates for being totally dishonest when they say, and they all say this, that abortion law should be left to the states. They don't believe this. It's tactical. They want a federal ban, but they know that it has zero chance of success, so they're going to take what they can get state by state. I'm sorry, guys, but it is not a local question. When does a person's life begin? This is a civil rights question, or this is a human rights question. You don't have different human rights in different states. This is America, and we make those decisions together. Okay, that's my case. If you disagree with me, great. Tell me why. And if you like what I say, show me some love. Give me 5 stars. Give me a comment. Best of all, hit that beautiful orange button that says subscribe. Thanks for watching.